Mix it up.
Let's talk about testing 1, 2, 3. Well, not really. Let's talk about the pitfalls of modern academia. The style of teaching common in modern schools is a relic of a time gone by, though not especially as recently as I think most people believe. The method of learning commonly known to us in the classroom setting is designed for students to learn basic mechanics common in mindless tasks, such as basic arithmetic, and skill-based professions, such as carpentry and basket weaving. Though this method of engagement is commonly effective with most students, which is why it has perpetuated throughout all these years, when looking at the pitfalls that come from modern academia, I'd like for those of you that have some semblance of interest in the topic to look at testing 1, 2, 3. It's actually fairly accurate in terms of what's really going on in modern classrooms. I won't mask my initial apprehension at the episode. I found it quite jarring. Being entrenched in school myself, I felt it was a slap in the face of a teaching style that I'd had become quite comfortable and acclimated to. But in time, I was forced to reconcile with the many flaws that our educational system has come across in its many years of stoic perseverance in the face of ever-advancing technology. Coming back to testing 1, 2, 3, I feel that Rainbow Dash is experiencing something that we will all experience at some time or another in our academic careers: the inability to engage ourselves in a material that we are simply not interested in, no matter how relevant it is towards our goals. She initially believes incorrectly that she'd do fine on the examination without knowledge of the material, something obviously wrong, but let's look at this more deeply. Rainbow Dash is drawing a parallel to modern schooling systems' inability to adapt to students with engagements ill-suited for the classroom. These students are typically poor-performing yet highly intelligent students, of which there are many in the school system today. The reason these students do not do well in the classroom is typically one of engagement. Now, I say engagement specifically to disregard the misnomer of learning style, as I don't believe that learning style exists at all. I don't believe that if a student who has trouble with geography and can't learn landmarks and locations from looking at a map, that they might better absorb the information through a song. Such a concept is both foreign and ridiculous to me. I am, however, well aware that some students do not absorb information readily through textbooks. Why is that? Because textbooks are mind-numbingly boring. Because they make almost no attempt to engage the reader, and there are very few opportunities for the reader to become engaged in the material, except out of very high necessity. For example, when's the last time you've seen someone crack open a textbook on the physical inaccuracies of Newton's laws as applied to quantum mechanics? Chances are you haven't. Why? Because such a subject is so far removed from anything of relevance in your immediate life that it becomes insignificant. Yet the information that Newton's laws don't fully apply to quantum is important, because it shows that we have not yet fully understood grand unified theory. Rainbow Dash does eventually realize that she is in need of help and goes to Twilight. Sure, this is the logical step, but Twilight displays many of the flaws in modern academia. Twilight makes almost no attempt to really make the lesson interesting or fun, to engage Rainbow Dash in the learning process, and instead falls on the mechanical, autonomous learning cycles that we have all come to begrudgingly know. How do we engage students then? Well, I think the first step is to remove the fear of failure from students. Rainbow Dash is constantly afraid of failing the test, which is why she goes to such outlandish lengths to learn this material in such a short amount of time. Yet, knowing the material by a certain time is important. How to accomplish this? One method would be to start the learning process earlier, to acclimate Rainbow Dash to the engagement methods of the school. However, this way isn't of much use in the current situation, and much less useful for current students, so I'll discard that methodology for now. The other way is to make a game of it. Extra Credits has made an excellent video on how to gamify education, and I highly suggest you check it out if you'd like to find out ways to make school more engaging, though most of what they talk about is directed towards the teaching staff. If you have the initiative, though, I'm sure you can bring up these methodologies for your school system to help out future classes. For those of you too lazy, or with an attention span not large enough to pause this video and go watch that, I'll briefly speak about some of the topics covered in that video to explain here. One of the methods mentioned in Extra Credits episode on education is the idea of a reward system instead of a punishment system when dealing with assignments. In current assignments, when homework is not turned in, or when you have a question wrong on an assignment or test, it is irrevocably lost, by which I mean the points are gone forever. There is often no way of repairing the damage to your grade except by being perfect everywhere else and raising the average. This idea is not conducive to a positive learning cycle and actively hinders learning in general. Suddenly, the focus turns from understanding the material to getting the question correct, which opens up a ton of problems, including but not limited to cheating, cramming, and a lack of engagement in general. For example, if the system were to be changed to a reward system, points would be racked up not according to how much work was done, but how much correct work had been done. A system of infinite points would trivialize failure, as there is always more work to do if you didn't understand it the first time. It will also promote real learning instead of what is going on right now with the punishment standard. People may think that a reward system may be too complicated, or require too much work on part of the teachers, but this simply isn't true. There are a variety of resources available to both sides, teaching and learning, that would give them the raw quantity of problem sets to achieve this goal. Sure, there might be more grading, but think about it. Instead of marking up things as wrong all the time, it becomes more like marking what's correct and awarding points for a good job. The system ends up being extremely fair as well, since bright students who work intelligently and have a natural tendency towards the teaching style of the teacher would end up doing less work overall, while students who need the extra work to help them understand would get it. After the initial hump of a change of system, I doubt that it would be very much extra work, because all classes follow the natural Gaussian curve, for those of you who have taken economics or statistics. The other big topic that credits talked about is agency. Agency is something they keep coming back to over the course of their videos time and time again, and they should. The power of choice is very important both psychologically and sometimes mechanically in any decision tree, games, and life included. In education, a sense of agency is imperative for a student to be motivated towards self-improvement. Students must choose to be in school, at the very least on an unconscious level, to be able to perform well there. If students are in a classroom simply because they have no other choice, then their motivation and engagement will suffer as a result. So how do you induce agency and still have kids pick school over what they could do otherwise, say play Battlefield or Call of Duty? Well, there are a variety of factors that go into this, but I think My Little Pony shows us the answer again. Rainbow Dash makes a conscious choice to be with her friends every day. She chooses her friends rather than whatever else she could be doing. She shows agency in her life, and her choices and actions reflect that. Moving on. Rainbow Dash comes across something else in her quest for knowledge. When faced with failure, she directs blame onto Twilight. Misplaced as it is, it's also very common for students to turn to their teachers and claim that their teaching style doesn't work, or that they just have a very bad instructor. While at times this may be true, this episode shows the absurdities of this transference when it's not. And believe me that most of the time, it's not. In fact, this misunderstanding would have escalated into a huge argument and probably would have put a seed into their friendship that would have torn them apart if not dealt with appropriately. Thankfully, Fluttershy uses her excellent conflict resolution skills to diffuse the situation, but for us, we don't have a stick of butter to pull us out of these situations, much less a living, breathing, magnanimous presence. The various methods that Rainbow is introduced to in her Hour of Need actually embody the engagements of the six fairly well, if not a bit shallow. Sure, the fact that she remembered everything is rather contrived, but what she was doing has a real-world counterpart. It's called tangential learning, and it's also discussed to some depth by X-Credits. What is tangential learning? It's when you are doing something and unconsciously absorb information. As a rather pointed example, taken directly from Credits' video, nobody knew who King Leonidas was prior to 300. Yet, albeit the film was filled with inconsistencies and holes, a large portion of the audience now knows the King of the Spartans in their most perilous hour. This isn't limited to movies either. Games, books, music, and even common activities like driving can accomplish this task wonderfully. And so, although it is no far stretch to believe that Rainbow Dash picked some of these facts up while flying, much as you would pick up certain details about the road when driving, or when you pick up details when watching visual media, you can learn things without meaning to. This is an excellent way to induce engagement in an audience in order to teach them facts without being too over the head about it. Of course, it's more difficult to do with formulas, complex mathematical and physics concepts, but if brought to a higher level, I'm sure tangential learning would work there as well. So, all in all, I think this episode was entertaining enough. Honestly, I don't claim that this was meant to be social commentary on the educational system, and I don't claim to know what it was trying to do. This is just one perspective, one of many valid ones. But I do hope that, at the end of this video, maybe you've achieved some tangential learning of your own, and maybe you'll try to change your own engagement methods to do better in school. Maybe life too.